Why is Europe turning away from U.S. tourism? In recent years, a quiet shift has been taking place across Europe, one that many Americans haven't noticed yet. European governments, from France to Italy, are starting to place limits, taxes, or even outright restrictions on mass tourism, including visitors from the United States. While official bans are rare, the tone has changed. Europe is no longer rolling out the red carpet for U.S. tourists. The COVID-19 pandemic first disrupted the traditional flow of American travelers, but now deeper issues are reshaping the tourism landscape, from over-tourism and environmental damage to political tensions and cultural fatigue. The question is, why is Europe rethinking its relationship with one of its biggest tourist markets? 2. One of the key drivers behind this shift is over-tourism. The sheer volume of visitors overwhelming Europe's most famous destinations. Before the pandemic, Americans accounted for tens of millions of annual visits to cities like Paris, Rome, and Barcelona. But with that came crowding, rising prices, and local frustration. Venice has introduced entry fees for day trippers, Amsterdam has banned new hotels, and Barcelona now limits short-term rentals. While these measures apply to all tourists, Americans, often arriving in large groups or on cruise ships, have become symbolic of the mass tourism problem. European leaders argue that without regulation, tourism could destroy the very heritage and culture that attract travelers in the first place. 3. Beyond crowding, there's a growing environmental concern. The European Union has pledged to cut carbon emissions dramatically by 2030, and air travel is a major target. Transatlantic flights between the U.S. and Europe contribute significantly to CO2 emissions, making American tourism a visible environmental issue. Several countries, including France and the Netherlands, have introduced taxes on short flights or are discussing green levies for long-haul visitors. The idea is simple. If Europe wants to lead the world in sustainability, it cannot keep encouraging unlimited tourism from across the ocean. Americans, who tend to fly frequently and stay for short visits, are being indirectly discouraged, not through bans, but through pricing and policy shifts. 4. There's also an element of economic recalibration. European cities have realized that depending too heavily on U.S. tourism makes them vulnerable to economic swings and political tensions. When the dollar weakens or Washington imposes new travel rules, the European tourism sector suffers. Many governments now want to diversify, focusing more on local and regional visitors and on attracting high-value tourists who stay longer and spend more sustainably. This change is visible in EU reports that emphasize quality over quantity. For example, Greece and Spain are promoting off-season cultural travel instead of cheap summer beach holidays. In this strategy, mass tourism from America, often concentrated in short summer bursts, becomes less desirable economically. 5. Another factor is political and cultural tension. Relations between the U.S. and Europe have cooled in the last decade. Disagreements over climate policy, data privacy, and global conflicts have made European policymakers less inclined to prioritize American interests. In cultural terms, many Europeans view U.S. tourists as loud, wasteful, or culturally insensitive. Stereotypes reinforced by viral social media clips. Some destinations have quietly shifted marketing budgets away from the U.S. toward Asian and Middle Eastern countries. It's not hostility, but fatigue. The post-war image of the American traveler as a symbol of prosperity and freedom has faded. Today, the U.S. tourist is often seen as part of a globalized, consumer-heavy travel culture Europe wants to escape. 6. A major turning point came during the pandemic travel restrictions of 2020-2021. When the U.S. kept its borders closed to European visitors long after Europe reopened, resentment grew. European politicians questioned why they should welcome Americans when reciprocity wasn't guaranteed. That episode left a lasting mark on travel diplomacy. Even after borders reopened, new bureaucratic hurdles appeared, such as the upcoming ETIAS travel authorization system, which will require Americans to register and pay before visiting Europe. While not a ban, it's a clear signal. Visa-free travel privileges are no longer taken for granted. Europe is asserting control over its tourism system, treating the US more like any other foreign market, rather than a special partner. 7. These changes also reflect a broader European identity shift. As the EU strengthens its internal integration, it's prioritizing European citizens, local economies, and sustainable growth over international dependence. Tourism is being reframed as a public policy issue, not just an economic one. Governments want to reduce real estate inflation caused by foreign demand and protect local residents from being priced out of their own cities. In that sense, American tourists, along with investors buying short-term rental properties, represent a larger problem: globalization eroding local life. Cities like Lisbon and Dubrovnik have explicitly linked tourism reform to preserving cultural authenticity, even if that means losing millions in short-term revenue from Americans. 8. Of course, this shift isn't only about policy, it's about public sentiment. Across Europe, locals are increasingly vocal about the downsides of mass tourism. Protests in Spain, Italy, and Croatia now regularly feature slogans like "Tourists go home" or "My city is not for sale." Americans, often more visible due to language and spending habits, become easy targets in these debates. Social media amplifies the issue. Videos of misbehaving tourists or tone-deaf influencers spread rapidly, fueling resentment. This creates a feedback loop where both locals and tourists feel alienated. For Europe, curbing mass tourism becomes not just a political choice, but a social necessity, a way to restore balance between visitors and residents. 9. The consequences of this transformation are complex. Economically, some European regions may suffer short-term losses as tourist numbers drop. Luxury sectors catering to American travelers, high-end hotels, designer shops, and cruise lines could see a decline. But in the long run, European policymakers argue the benefits outweigh the costs. Cleaner cities, preserved landmarks, and a more sustainable tourism economy. For Americans, it means travel to Europe may become more expensive, regulated, and selective. Instead of cheap flights and open borders, future travel could require advanced registration, environmental fees, and stricter local rules. The age of spontaneous, unlimited American tourism in Europe may be ending. 10. In the bigger picture, Europe's cautious stance toward U.S. tourism reflects a global trend. Nations are rethinking what kind of tourism they want, one that serves local communities, not just global demand. For decades, American tourists symbolized global connectivity and economic vitality. Now they symbolize excess consumption and environmental strain. The shift isn't about rejecting Americans, it's about redefining priorities. As Europe leads this transition, others may follow, from Asia to South America. The future of tourism will likely be smaller, smarter, and more sustainable. And for travelers, that means one clear message: the age of easy travel is over. To experience Europe, you'll now need more than a ticket. You'll need purpose.